Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Utica. I am Sarah Miller, and my pronouns are she, her. I am a member of this church, a member of the Committee on Ministry, and I'm also a member of the inclusion team who played a role in planning this service today. Whether you are visiting us for the first time or have been a member for many years, you are welcome here. Whatever faiths you have known, if any, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. We are invited to bring our whole selves to this worship service, our doubts as well as our convictions, the pain and joy we have known, our longing for connection and understanding. Every part of you is welcome here. If you are signing in today for the first time, we are glad you have joined us, and we hope you'll stay for informal conversation in breakout groups after the service. Let us open our hearts and minds to the experience of community and the wisdom of love.
Look at me. You may think you see who I really am, but you'll never know me. Every day, it's as if I play a part. Now I see, if I wear a mask, I can fool the world, but I cannot fool my heart. Who is that girl I see staring straight back at me? When will my reflection show who I am inside? I am now in a world where I have to hide my heart and what I believe in, but somehow I will show the world what's inside my heart and be loved for who I am. Who is that girl I see staring straight back at me? Why is my reflection someone I don't know? Must I pretend that I'm someone else for all time? When will my reflection show who I am inside? A heart that must be free to fly, that burns with a need to know the reason why. Why must we all conceal what we think, how we feel? Must there be a secret to me I'm forced to hide? I won't pretend that I'm someone else for all time. When will my reflection show who I am inside? When will my reflection show who I am inside?
Good morning. I am the Reverend Erin Dyka Holly. I apologize that my internet connection is unstable, so hopefully you are hearing me. And I am a cisgendered straight woman, and I use she, her pronouns. Our call to worship by Sharon Wiley. We speak so often of brokenness in religious life. Let us speak today of wholeness. You are welcome here, all of you. Every part of you beautiful just the way you are. Here you do not need to be something more or something less. No holding back, no exerting yourself, no trying to do more or be me or the faces in their boxes on the screen or to the children or to anyone. You don't have to try and be witty or more quiet or more outgoing. You are beautiful. Every part of you, beautiful, just the way you are. You do not need to change anything about yourself to be welcome here. Your skin, your hair, your belly, your limbs, your face, all beautiful, just the way they are. You are extraordinary. Each and every one of you different from each and beautiful in your own beautiful way. Breathtaking. Let us worship together. Please remain muted and join in singing our hymn of the month, Hush.
This month's hymn is an African-American spiritual from the times of slavery. Songs like this represented the deep sorrows of slavery and the dream of freedom. I cannot understand or imagine what that was like, but I try to keep it in mind as I sing these words.
Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Soon, one morning, death come creeping into my room. Soon, one morning, death come creeping into my room. Soon, one morning, death come creeping into my room. Oh my Lord, shall I do? What shall I do? I'm so glad trouble don't last always. I'm so glad trouble don't last always. I'm so glad trouble don't last always. Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do?
So we light our morning. We have words from Eric Walker Wickstrom. Here today, in this space and with these people, may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know, and may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice we light our way. Hush. Somebody's calling my name. Somebody's calling my true name. Somebody's calling to who I am inside. Hush. This morning's service is going to, and I hope that particularly those of you who, like me, identify as straight and cisgendered, will quiet your own voices during this service to listen. That kind of listening that transcends ears and words, to the stories of those in our congregation who have not only the courage to come out as LGBTQIA+, but to tell their stories, to say, this is me. Today is National Coming Out Day, a day established in 1988 for the visibility of the varieties of gender identity and sexuality. It's a complicated day for many who identify LGBTQ+. Know that coming out continues to be a privilege. For many, it's repeat that. Today, it is a risk of ostracization from family and friends. It is to risk being kicked out of your home. It is to risk employment. It is to risk literally physical safety. People die because they are out. Die because We haven't fixed the problem yet. In 2020, fears that had been quelled over the last 3 decades by protections of the law, employment protections, housing protections, marriage protections, are once again true fears. In the last week, 2 Supreme Court justices openly questioned the Obergefell, guessing at the pronunciation, my apologies, the precedent, the case that opened up marriage equality in all 50 states. Can you imagine the fear of Supreme Court justices threatening to make the marriage you have illegal? And all of the protections that come with it, the health insurance, the visitation rights, the property rights, the custody of your children. What would it mean if suddenly your marriage ceased to be legal? These are very real questions right now. Janet Mock, a transgender rights activist and author, said, "I believe that telling our stories first to ourselves and then to one another in the world is a revolutionary act." This morning, 4 members of the inclusion team will tell their stories about their identities, about coming out, about how they are called to be in the world. And I invite you to listen, to engage in the kind of listening that fills your soul and makes space for you to change. The kind of listening that makes it so clear that the words and the person behind the words matter. Listen, believe, hold what you hear sacred. And with what you have learned, live into what it means to be radically inclusive. Live into lending your efforts to the work of change that we know must happen in our world. Listening is a sacred act. Hush. Somebody's calling your name. We are called this morning to listen. Hush.
Hi everyone, welcome to Together Time and happy National Coming Out Day. Today we're going to read a book about gender identity, which is something that I know a lot of people have a hard time grasping, especially if you grew up where there was a strict gender binary. So our story today is called It Feels Good to Be Yourself, a book about gender identity. And I really hope this will explain a lot of things for those of you who are still struggling. It Feels Good to Be Yourself by Teresa Thorne and illustrated by Noah Grigney. This is Ruthie. She's a transgender girl. That means when she was born, everyone thought she was a boy, until she grew a little older, old enough to tell everyone she's actually a girl. Girl is Ruthie's gender identity. This is Ruthie's brother, Xavier. Xavier is a cisgender boy. That means when Xavier was born, everyone thought he was a boy, and as he grew older, it turned out everyone was right. He is a boy. Boy is Xavier's gender identity. There are so many different ways to be a boy or a girl, too many to fit in a book. But not everyone feels like either a boy or a girl. Non-binary is a helpful word that can describe a kid who doesn't feel exactly like a boy or a girl. This is Ruthie's friend, Alex. Alex is both a boy and a girl. When Alex was born, everyone thought Alex was a girl, but Alex is both boy and girl. This is Alex's gender identity. This is Alex's friend, JJ. JJ is neither a boy nor a girl. Ever since JJ was very little, They never felt exactly like a boy or a girl. They just felt like themselves. This is JJ's gender identity. Alex and JJ are both non-binary. Just like there are many different ways to be a boy or a girl, there are many different ways to be non-binary. Too many to fit in a book. Some kids feel like girls. Some kids feel like boys. Some kids feel like a little bit of both, part boy, part girl. Some kids don't feel exactly like a boy or a girl. They feel like neither. Some kids feel their gender identity isn't always the same. It's often changing. And even with all these possible ways to be, some kids don't feel any of the words they know fit them exactly right. There are a never-ending number of ways to be yourself in the world. Whether you feel like a boy, a girl, both, or neither, or if you describe yourself another way, that is your gender identity. Your gender identity might match what people thought you were when you were born, or it might not. See, when you were born, you couldn't tell people who you were or how you felt. They looked at you and made a guess. Maybe they got it right, maybe they got it wrong. What a baby's body looks like when they're born can be a clue to what that baby's gender will be, but not always. When people guess wrong, it's okay to let them know. Ruthie was 5 when she told her parents, "I know you think I'm a boy, but I really feel like a girl." Oops, Ruthie was a girl all along. They just didn't know it at first. When people guess right, it's also okay to let them know. Xavier was 3.5 when he told his family, "I'm a boy. I like being a boy." You might feel like a boy. You might feel like a girl. You might feel like both boy and girl, or like neither. You might feel like your gender changes from day to day or from year to year. You might feel that none of these words describes you perfectly. You might not be sure yet. Maybe you're still figuring it out. Your feelings about your gender are real. Listen to your heart. No matter what your gender identity is, you are okay exactly the way you are, and you are loved. It feels good to be yourself, doesn't it? And that is the end of our story. There are some helpful terms to know here that I'm just going to read over really quick. Terms like sex assigned at birth, intersex, gender identity, gender expression, cisgender, transgender, and non-binary. And then there are some notes about pronouns, which I think we're going to hear a little bit more about. And there are some helpful resources. So, as always, if you want more information that's in the back of the book, more helpful resources, more about the author's note or the illustrator's note, you can email me at religioused@uuutica.org, and I will be happy to give you this information. And I just want you to see on the back, it says again, no matter what your gender identity is, you are okay, exactly the way you are, and you are loved. That's all we have for Together Time today. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care.
Thanks for the thanks for the story, Stephanie. Katie, and my pronouns are she and they. And I'm going to tell everyone a little bit about being intersex and being non-binary. When I was born, everyone was pretty sure I was a girl. Then, sometime between then and my earliest memories, one of my parents' friends, who was a doctor, suggested they get me tested for something called Turner syndrome. And as it turns out, she was right to make that suggestion because I do have Turner syndrome. To explain what Turner syndrome is and what's meant by intersex, I'll have to give anyone who's had high school biology a bit of a reminder, and anyone who hasn't yet a hopefully short explanation about why human bodies follow two general patterns and how some don't always fit either. Turner syndrome means that I only have one X chromosome, when most girls and women have two. I looked like a girl to everyone because I didn't get the Y chromosome that would have made me look like a boy. Since people who have Turner syndrome's bodies don't follow the usual pattern for either sex, female or male, that means that according to many doctors, they are in between the two, so they're called intersex. Just like there's a lot of ways to express gender identity as a girl, boy, or being non-binary, there's a lot of ways a person could be intersex. Some, like me, find out only after being tested. They might have a different number of X and Y chromosomes than most people have, or other ways their hormones don't act the same as most other people's. Others are born with bodies that don't look exactly like either sex, and so it's clear from the beginning. Babies like these used to be called hermaphrodites, which is still one of the medical terms, but since it's been used as an insult so often in the past, it's not considered a very nice thing to call someone. When I was born, most people thought that the best thing to do was assign the babies a sex, even using surgery to change their bodies if they needed to. This was especially true for babies whose bodies looked different from the start. Parents and doctors thought that was the best way for the children to be healthy and avoid feeling left out or being made fun of. So they would do surgery to make the baby's body look and mostly work like a girl's or boy's, and then raise them as if they were. The problem was, this meant the child didn't get to tell everyone who they were before their body was operated on. I was lucky that nobody thought I needed surgery, but my parents did think that I needed to be brought up as a girl. Not only did everyone around me treat me like a girl, my doctors helped make sure my body grew and changed like a girl's too. Because one of the effects of Turner syndrome is that my body doesn't make enough of the hormones that cause the change, I've taken pills as part of what's called hormone replacement therapy ever since I was a teenager. The thing is, I'm happiest not identifying as a girl or a boy. It's something I've realized as I've gotten older, and mostly within the last few years. There wasn't really a way to talk about it when I was a child, since the idea wasn't part of my culture, even if, thinking back, there were hints. I'd get upset when my brother and our friends asked me to play a boy's role in a game because I was the only girl with short hair, but only because I thought short hair was a silly reason to decide who played a boy. When I got into college and joined a group that learned medieval dancing, I was usually happy to dance both boy and girl parts to the dances. But even when joking around about that, or if I ever did jokingly say that Turner syndrome meant I wasn't one or the other, whoever I was talking to would hurry to assure me that no, I was a girl. They probably thought they were being kind, but the kind thing to do would have been to listen. Fortunately, more people today listen when someone talks about their identity. More doctors are waiting until a baby born intersex grows up enough to say who they are before doing surgery to help their bodies match their gender. Everyone who I've told about being non-binary so far has been an excellent listener, and I hope that continues as I have to tell more people. Because this is the truth for queer people of all types. Whenever we meet someone new, we make the decision about how much of our story to tell, whether to come out or not.
Alex, and my pronouns are he, him, his. I fall under an umbrella term, transmasculine. Meaning, when I was born, everyone thought that I was a girl, but I don't identify as a girl. When I was in 7th grade, I started questioning my gender identity. I knew the words that I had been taught to describe myself. Girl, she, her. But those weren't right. I tried different words and identity labels for about a year before finding the right words to describe who I am. One of my friends I opened up to about my gender experience started calling me Alex. It was the second week into 8th grade, and at that moment, I felt like I could do anything. Soon after, I came out to my English teacher, who was absolutely amazing about it. He ended up telling me about how his fiance is bisexual and how he accepts me as who I am. But not every part of my coming out experience has been perfect. It took a while for my parents to be on board since we didn't have the best relationship before my transition. Growing up, I was always different from other girls. I played with cars and trucks, and most of my friends were boys. But the difference were inside as well. It wasn't long into my schooling that my peers started to notice how different I really was. That's when I started to struggle with bullying and depression, and mental health has had a large impact on my life and transition. It wasn't until around last year that things started to change. I was hospitalized for mental health, and my caseworker recommended that my parents help more actively in my social and medical transition. This included using my preferred name and pronouns, and later down the line, allowing me to start testosterone, which started this past January. Things were good for a while, but then I officially started high school. My identity got pushed under the rug. The school used the wrong name and pronouns for me, and my parents started to as well. If I did not want this to happen, I had to advocate for myself, sometimes even having to correct teachers. And late last fall, I've reached out to someone for help that I met at an LGBT group a few years ago. She was 10 years older than me, and over that winter, their family came to see me as their son and brother. I stayed with them for almost 3 months until quarantine, and I can't fully describe what it felt like to have a supportive environment finally. I had to go back to a situation where I felt alone and invisible. I was home alone most of the time, and with quarantine, not many people want to go out. Because of being home all the time and so little interaction and so little validation, I lost focus and motivation for schoolwork. I almost failed 4 classes. 3 of them were core classes. At the end of the school year, I did makeup packets, but I don't know how I managed to do it on my own. But somehow, I managed to find another supportive environment in the middle of a global pandemic. This summer, I spent a lot of time with an old friend, catching up and just hanging out. Her family respected my identity without question and let me actually explore my gender identity in a welcoming and safe environment. We ended up becoming so close that I had a significant role in her aunt and uncle's wedding. In times when I needed a stable place where I could be myself and feel safe, these families took me in. It's people like those 2 families, the friend in 8th grade who gave me my name, even my old English teacher, who I would say saved my life. I felt alone and forgotten, but these people became my chosen family. It's so important to know that family doesn't only mean the people you are biologically related to or the people you live with. Sometimes We all need someone to recognize and validate us, and for someone to listen and accept us when we say, "This is me."
Now we will practice community candles, which is an opportunity for the congregation to be with one another as we mark notable things happening in our lives. If you would like to light a candle where you are, please do, and in frame if you would like. If you would like to briefly share about a significant event in your life and have me light a candle here, please unmute yourself or type into the chat. You could also privately message me in the chat to light a candle for you in silence. I will light this candle for welcoming all of the ways that we welcome people into our lives with open hearts. A candle of welcome for Matthew Cavallari, who has introduced himself in the chat. And all of the sense of welcoming that we can bring to the world, whatever that looks like and feels like, so that we can show those who need a home that we can be a home, and to take all of those steps. I am lighting a candle in silence for a member of our congregation. And as always, I light a final candle for everything that has remained unsaid, for all of the stories that we have not heard. May we keep our hearts open to hear them, and may we hold in sacredness the truths and the pain and the joys and the celebrations among us and all of humanity and our world. Amen. And now I invite you to settle where you are in space. Feel what is supporting you, that's connecting you to the earth. And here, know that you are held. You are safe. Rest here. You have been holding too much worry, too much anger, too much fear. Here, right now, just rest. Let go of the clenching, the tightness. Wherever in your body you feel the tension, ask it to release. You do not need to hold it right now. You do not need to hold everything. Let it go for now. Here you are safe. You are held. You are free to live into your deepest truth. Amen.
My name is Jules, and I am a member of this church and its inclusion team. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I am non-binary and genderqueer. I spent 27 years of my life living as a cisgender woman, using she, her pronouns, always feeling that there was just something not quite right with that, but not knowing what it was or how to fix it. When I say that I always felt something was not right, I mean every time someone said, "Oh, Julia told me she can meet on Friday," something inside me twisted. Every time someone said, "Julia and her team should work on the posters," I winced. Imagine getting a very mild stomachache multiple times a day for decades and not having the words to describe what felt wrong. And many people have much worse experiences with wrongly assigned gender. Many people have more visceral and damaging dysphoria or discomfort. Mine happened to be just low level enough that I could make it 27 years before realizing maybe a dozen emotional paper cuts a day isn't sustainable. Maybe that's not something I should have to go through to be in this world. Maybe something needs to change. And it turns out that the only thing that needed to change was the words other people used to describe me. I myself don't feel any different than I have my whole life, at least in terms of my gender. There have been some questionable fashion and music choices since 1990 that I have moved through. But in about 2018, when I asked some friends to start using they instead of she, them instead of her, they instead of theirs instead of hers, you hear people talk about a weight lifting off their shoulders, and I always thought that was hyperbole, but I have breathed better in these same lungs. I have walked taller in this same body. I have finally felt like things were right since I claimed the right words for my pronouns and my gender description. So I want to talk a little bit about what the word queer means. My gender is queer because it does not fully fit into the strict categorizations of man or woman. My orientation is queer because it does not follow any strict categorization except that it's not entirely straight. But queer is a much broader term and carries very distinct historical significance in activism. Queer is an adjective, but I invite you to think of it as a verb, not just something you can be, but something you can do. A word that places you not passively separate from a rigid binary, but in active opposition to the concept of binaries as default, as the only natural state of being. I call myself queer because queerness is a call to action, rejecting the perceived normalcy of oppressive societal structures and asking us to do the work of building intersectional communities. Queer activism is rooted in the work of trans women of color who have consistently reminded us that we all do better when we all do better, that the health of a community should be measured by the health of its most marginalized members. Queer activism recognizes, as Unitarian Universalism does, that we are all interconnected and interdependent, and when any oppression exists, it threatens that interdependent web. So I'm queer because of me, because of my truth and myself, but because of so much more besides. I'm queer because there is still so little positive representation of bisexuality in media and pop culture, and one of my best friends has wanted to die since she was 14 because she feels different, invisible, erased. I'm queer because trans lives are valid and beautiful, because asexuality is valid and beautiful, because exclusionists claiming to be feminists, claiming to be radical, claiming to want what we want, continue to use their platforms to perpetuate violent rhetoric against our ace and trans siblings. I'm queer because I have gay family members who were taken to conversion therapy by their mothers long before I was born. because I have family members who lost friends and partners to an epidemic while a callous government watched. I'm queer because I shouldn't count as an elder in the LGBTQ+ community. But I do, because there's this awful gap where so many others should be standing. I'm queer because of the dozens of kids and teens who came to Rome's Pride event last year, covered in gay and trans and non-binary flags and regalia, proudly and joyously standing with and for each other, already exploring their identities and already possessing much larger vocabularies about all of this than I ever did at their age. Because that's what generational knowledge is supposed to do, give the younger generation a starting point that's a little further along than what we had. So maybe they'll have a little easier path than we did. I'm queer because if the Supreme Court overturns the Obergefell ruling that grants legal legitimacy and protection to same-sex marriages, one of my dearest friends who has chronic pain and life-threatening medical conditions may lose her wife's military benefits. I'm queer because of every single person today who has chosen not to come out. Because of every person who has had to weigh the physical and emotional benefit of claiming and owning their truest selves publicly against the physical and emotional risk that carries. I'm queer because of every person who feels they can do more good keeping the privilege of passing for cisgender or straight in this society, and has chosen not to come out so they can keep using their passing privilege to advocate, to do good, to protect others. I'm queer because we're not done yet. We haven't fixed the problem yet. We aren't safe yet. So I'm queer because words mean things. And queer is more than gay or lesbian or LGBT. Queer means rejecting restrictive and constrictive binaries, recognizing the historical significance of different movements, different labels, different terminology, and saying that all of them are part of the arc of truth and justice and not yet its terminus. Queer is a political statement that simply being afforded the same rights as straight people is not enough, because the rights afforded to straight people aren't enough for straight people either. It's not just about making it safe for boys to dress like girls or for girls to dress like boys. It's about recognizing that clothes shouldn't be gendered things in the first place. It's not just about diversifying our communities and our neighborhoods. It's about recognizing housing as a core human right and advocating for economic justice in the face of systemic racism, sexism, and classism. It's not just about holding the white cisgender male CEO up as the ideal measure of a successful life, as the goal for everyone else to strive for. It's about envisioning and working toward a world where our successes, our worth is not predicated on someone else's failures, not founded on someone else's oppression. Because we all deserve to live as nuanced, complex human beings, and we don't have to settle for good enough for almost right. We can all claim the words, the policies, the communities, the world that make us finally feel like things are right, and we can be who we are together.
My name is Branwen. I'm a member of the board and also a member of the inclusion group. I'm a trans woman lesbian. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I would like to thank Jules and Alex and Katie for their inspirational readings. I'm reading a poem I wrote as a part of one of the things I do for my dysphoria. This poem is called Lost. I once felt lost, but I was there. I couldn't find me because I didn't see. Others couldn't find me. They never looked because they didn't know I existed. Was I real? Was I invisible? Where was the real me? Waiting, wondering, wandering. Where am I? Who am I? Why is it so dark? Why the deep fog? Why no light? Waiting, wondering, wandering. Am I lost or just not found? Walk by a mirror. There is a glimmer, a flicker, a flame. That glimmer, that flicker, that flame, it's in me. It is hope. The glimmer grew. The flame is now a torch. Hope now lights the way. I now shine. I look in the mirror every day. No longer lost or not found. I see me. Please join in while remaining on mute to our closing hymn, number 1059. May your life be as a song.
May your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn, to sing awake the light, and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing the stars, ever dancing the stars, to sing awake the light, and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing with the stars, to sing awake the stars, ever dancing with the stars. The stars ever dancing stars to sing awake the light, and softly serenade the stars ever dancing stars to sing awake the stars, ever sing with the stars to sing awake the stars, ever dancing stars to sing awake the light, and softly serenade the stars ever dancing stars to sing awake the stars. Ever dancing stars, ever dancing stars, to sing awake the light, ever dancing stars, serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night, ever dancing circles in the night.
Please join in our words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. We have witnessed bravery this morning. We have witnessed depth and vulnerability. We have listened with our being, and we have been changed. As this sacred time of listening ends, may we take with us the knowledge that we can shape a world in which all of us finally feel like things are right, and we can be who we are together. Amen.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall and no one would hear? So let that lonely feeling wash away. Maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand, you can reach out your hand. And oh, someone will come running, and I know they'll take you home. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around, you will be found. You will be found. You will be found.
found.